Today on Shut the Front Door, we are joined by Charu Gandhi, founder and director of Elicyon, a multi-award-winning luxury interior design studio based in Kensington, London. Charu established Elicyon in 2014, driven by a desire to combine the rigours of her architectural practice and her creative flair and passion for design and craft. A registered architect, Charu has worked in the field of architecture and interior design for almost 2 decades. Charu and her team at Elicyon are the recent winners of the Design Society International Interior Designer of 2021. Inspired by historical references and cultural details via travels and people, architecture, sculpture and theatre, I am excited to talk about all things design with Charu today. Welcome, Charu, to Shut the Front Door. How are you?
I'm really well. Thank you for having me.
Well, I think I'll just jump straight in with my first question, if that's okay. And I'd love to ask you about your first memories of your first childhood memories of your home when you were growing up. Can you share some of those with me?
Yeah, absolutely. Very potent, very relevant, and very potent for me. My parents moved when I was very young out of the city to a part of town that wasn't particularly sort of well known. It was almost sort of deemed a bit of a strange choice, and they moved to a very large house which they rented for a few years, and then decided to buy a piece of land very close to it and build a home. So my early memories of home are of my parents really embracing building a family home. It was almost an estate, really. It was a large piece of land, and they embarked on building multiple properties on it. So very relevant to what I went on to do.
Okay, interesting.
And it was this was in Delhi in India. So I grew up in India.
Okay, oh my gosh. And can you describe a little bit more to me about what your family home looked like and what colors it maybe stayed with you or that you always remembered?
Yeah. So one of the things I really remember is how impeccably my mother kept the house. It was really, really, really beautifully kept, sort of down to, different bathrooms had different colored towels. Everything was always sort of well matched and put together. But within that sort of very impeccable state in which she always kept it was also lots and lots of craft. My mother has a huge interest in craft generally, but at the time in Indian craft. So I remember lots of trips to the Crafts Museum in Delhi where she would meet a craftsman. She would then commission a piece. Some pieces would take years to finish. India has a very diverse tapestry of craftsmanship from every state, every location. So there are typologies like Pichwai paintings. There's Bidri work on furniture. There's the miniature paintings, which are from the Mughal times but continue to be done. So lots of Indian craft, but also my parents traveled a lot and they loved to bring back things from Europe and the Far East, the 2 parts of the world they traveled to a lot, along with California. And so it was the base of it was this Indian craft, but layered in with lots of international pieces. It was quite a special home. In terms of colors, it tended to be quite soft tones. So if I don't think about it too much, then colors like lavender, a kind of celadon green come to mind. A very pale shade of rust comes to mind. So often quite soft, calming colors, but with very interesting craft.
My goodness, it sounds like you're describing nearly like watercolors.
Yes, yeah. It was really very, very beautiful. And at the time it just was what it was. But I look back now and think, gosh, I don't know how she did it. It was really, my father was at a very sort of illustrious point in his career. So they used to host these incredible parties, and there was always a theme for the party, and everything about the party kind of spoke to that theme. It was sort of those old days of hosting and entertaining.
Yes.
She was the sort of quintessential hostess. It was very, very charmed, very charmed.
My goodness. So she was definitely inspirational to you.
Yes, and now, in the last 25 years or so, she has been learning. She says she's learning. I would say she is a silversmith. So she's now a maker and a designer herself. So she lives in the UK now. We moved as a family to the state to London
Yes.
in '97, and she sort of engaged in craft, and now she's very embedded in the craft world in London. So yeah, very interesting.
My goodness. She is a very interesting lady.
Yes.
So when did your passion for interiors begin?
So my parents, when they were building this house, they worked with a couple of architects to start with, but then really around the age of 9, when I was 9 years old, they hired a young female architect. She was just under 30. She'd come back from doing her master's in Florence. And for me, I often say this, you cannot be what you cannot see. And she sort of arrived in my life like this on this sort of blaze of glory. And I had always, I knew I loved design. I knew I loved maybe the scientific and the mathematical. And she very quickly embodied what I wanted to be. And because she was the architect for my parents' home, she'd often come with drawings and models, and I would sit at the table with my parents and watch the process and watch her walk the site and review things. And it just sort of flicked a switch really for me.
Yes.
And I thought, yep, I just want to be exactly her. Turns
That
out,
is
luckily, that she's also very wonderful and a dear friend and mentor now. So she sort of inspired me into a framework of thinking, actually, I want to be an architect.
goodness. So she really influenced you.
Very much so, yes. And I went on to study at the Architectural Association in London, which is why I moved to London. And it was her who introduced me to the AA, which I would say has, shaped much of my career, that choice to go to the AA.
I see. I love that expression. You cannot be what you cannot see. I love that.
And that's part of why I now, I mean, this sounds incredibly pompous and I don't mean it as such, but this is why I now try and give some of my time to mentoring, not because I haven't gone on to be her specifically, but elements of her. And so I feel particularly with, women, young women embarking on careers, particularly young women from maybe ethnically diverse or socio-economically diverse backgrounds. I hope when I mentor, I can give, maybe there's an aspect of what I've done, not suggesting to anyone that they should want to be exactly me, because I've got lots to learn still. But I feel, because it worked, it did something for me. I hope I can, on occasion, help people just formulate their aspirations into something more tangible.
For sure. Well, you carved your own path, but she very much inspired you and influenced you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's lovely then that you can add on, you can pass all your pearls of wisdom on to
yes, if
new
you can
people,
call them that, yes.
entering in the field, because it's a tough industry, and this is how people really learn. So you're giving back, and that's really important.
Thank you.
Tell me about your college days. What were they like?
Yeah, so the AA, for those who don't know it, it's called the Architectural Association School of Architecture. It's the oldest educational institution dedicated solely to the teaching of architecture in the world. It's in Bedford Square. And it isn't studio-based learning in that you don't study together in a lecture. It's not that format. You study a lot on your own, but you work with you join a unit and there's a lead to the unit, a professor. You really buy into their ethos. The AA is, quite simply put, I would suggests one of the most groundbreaking institutions in the world of architecture. So people like Zaha Hadid studied there, Rem Koolhaas. There are not many names you'd name in sort of contemporary architecture that didn't study at the AA or had some relationship with it. So it's an incredibly immersive experience. It turns what architecture means and what it means to design and build buildings on its head. It treats architecture as a very elastic concept and stretches it. So it was hard. It was immersive. It pushed me, but I did the whole hog. I did foundation and then 5 years at the AA. So I'm an old hand at the AA. And yeah, people like Zaha would attend, some of our crits. It was an incredibly international group of students and professors. It was life changing, really.
How incredible. And did you get the opportunity to travel much?
Yes, so every year we'd have a unit trip, and my father would actually laugh because he'd say, "Okay, well, these unit trips are very exotic. We'd go to places, we went to Brazil for 3 weeks. People went on unit trips to Japan. We traveled all over the world, but." It really, that bit felt very natural. I grew up traveling. My father was a head of Apple Computers for South Asia. And so he had a big connection with California, but aspects of his work brought him regularly to Europe and to the Far East. So I spent my childhood, every school break on the move, traveling with my parents. So for me, the travel aspect of being at the AA was one bit that didn't feel unusual.
Yes, yeah, because you were already well traveled. You were very fortunate to get all that traveling in.
Very fortunate. It's been something I've thought about a lot the last 2 years because I have a young son and thought, oh gosh, almost panicking. He's missing out on travel.
I know. How old is he?
He's only 5.5, but I remember those very early trips I took. The first ever time we went to the States, we transited through Japan. We took Japan Airlines to the West Coast and remembered landing in the airport in Japan and just a sort of out of body experience, if a young child can have that. It was my first time out of India and really remember the airport in Japan. So I think those moments really, who knows, but I would suggest that they really shape us.
Definitely. Definitely. And it's really great, I think, to travel when you're super young because, yeah, I think it gives you confidence and definitely opens your mind to new places and new experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I also was packed off to boarding school really young. So, and then my parents, being my parents, didn't choose boarding school in India. I was sent to boarding school in Singapore. So at a very young age, I was heading up and down on international flights on my own. So,
my gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
Singapore. So what was that like?
Amazing again. So I went to an incredible institution called the United World College. It's part of a movement of United World Colleges, and this is the United World College of Southeast Asia. It's often noted in the sort of top 10 best schools in the world, and it teaches the International Baccalaureate program, which is now more and more common in the schooling program, but those days was more unusual. And the IB is a very diverse schooling program where you study lots of different subjects till quite right till the end of your schooling, and you do things like theory of knowledge. You write lots of thesis papers towards the end of your schooling. So a very inquisitive form of studying. And I absolutely loved it. And the boarding school had 57 nationalities. And so we were a big melting pot of people. And I think that's where, I learned a lot about different cultures, living with different cultures. I think it's it's sort of core to who I am today.
For sure. And do you think you grew up quite quickly as a result?
Yes and no. Boarding school's a funny old thing. You sort of, um, on the one hand, yes, I had a very protected life in India, and I certainly learned lots of practical things. But on the other hand, it was a bit of a sort of utopian bubble, the UWC campus. So in some ways, stayed very protected. Yes and no. Sorry, that's an annoying answer, but um, I grew up, but yet this because the UWC movement has such a strong ethos about sort of global understanding. It's the ethos is about how can people work together if they don't know each other, and how can they understand each other if they don't know each other. So there was lots of it was a bit of sort of we are the world kind of ethos, and you got very wrapped up in that and sort of lived in that. So when you left that and faced some of the harsh realities of the world in terms of conflict and people not getting along, that bit felt quite
Yes.
traumatic almost.
Yeah, for sure. And after working with like such prestigious companies such as Candy and Candy, what gave you the motivation to go out on your own? Did you always have a plan to run your own business one day?
No, so absolutely to the contrary. I would often say I'm never going to have a business. My father is a consummate entrepreneur, and so I'd seen sort of the good, the bad, and the very ugly, and
Mm-hmm.
very much thought, "Gosh, this is rubbish. It's just up and down, and I just want a nice stable. I just want to tick along." But it was a client that I met through my network who really sort of asked me the question repeatedly, why don't you set up? Why don't you create a studio? I'll give you my project. I'll give you my project. Um, and I kept sort of batting her away. When I say I kept, this all happened very quickly over a period of a few weeks when I'd left a job and was looking for my next job. And then suddenly thought, you know what? Why don't I? So I did. It was a client. It was a sort of external belief in me.
Hmm. Goodness, gosh, it was very brave and it was a good decision for you.
Very brave. I think in many ways I didn't fully, appreciate what it meant. I kept telling myself, well, I'm going to do this one project, which is about a year and a half. So it's almost like a project based thing. And I was very fatalistic in the early days. I kept saying, well, when it doesn't work out, if it doesn't work out, then, I'll go get a job. And it took me many years to stop talking about the studio in a sort of, this may be a temporary thing
I
kind of.
know. Yes, you were already planning a plan B before
Yes,
plan
yes,
A
yes,
worked
yes,
itself
yes,
out.
yes,
Yes.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Which, I often say about myself, I'm a paranoid optimist. And I think that's a very interesting,
Yeah.
but in
You
many ways,
take,
a helpful thing to be when you're a business owner.
yeah, you have to take calculated risks always.
Yes,
I mean, you
yes,
must, you have to.
yes,
But
yes,
it's good to take the risk.
yes, yes.
It's
Uh,
scary.
this is very scary. I mean, I now look back and think, gosh, I was so brave.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think sometimes, not fully appreciating. I think it's not that you're not scared. I think it's okay to be scared, but then do it anyway. you know,
Yes. Feel the fear and do it anyway.
do it anyway.
Isn't that what Susan Jeffers' famous line is? Do feel the fear and do it anyway. And it's true because you just
Yes.
never know what might happen.
No. So boy, have I done it. I did it. Yeah, I
You
can say
did.
that.
You
Yes.
definitely
Means I
did.
got the T-shirt. I did.
And what has been your most favorite property you've worked on to date or project you've worked on to date?
So I always, and I really do mean this, I always say it's the next one. It's for me, it's always the promise of what can come, and so for me, it's always the next one. Having said that, those early projects where it was, look, even today, clients, when they hire us, they do believe in me, of course, but now they're believing in the collective and the studio, which I am more proud of, actually, perhaps, than when they believed in me. But there was something very personal and special and very treasured about the
Yes.
first handful of projects where they were really taking a punt on me. And so those first projects will always have a very, very dear place in my heart. But really, favorite project, it's the next one.
The next one. Okay. And what would be your toughest project to date?
Toughest project to date. Um, Without sort of talking in too much specifics,
Yes.
but we took on a project. We pride ourselves on our capacity to work internationally with a big diaspora of clients from a wide range of backgrounds. But there was one project we took on from a particular part of the world with a very particular client type. It was a commercial client for a
Hmm.
development, and we could not crack the cultural divide. We
Interesting.
couldn't find common ground, and we were really trying. We, hired two people who spoke the local language into our team. We, spoke to them extensively to give us insight into the cultural nuances and expectations, but we couldn't find common ground in this one instance, which is, it's the only time that's happened for us. And we parted ways with the client, mutually parted ways with the client quite early in the process. So it wasn't
That's good.
detrimental to us or them. But
Yes.
yeah, that felt challenging. That felt challenging.
And did it upset you that it just didn't work out, or how did you feel after that experience?
Yeah, this is something I'm always working on. I can be quite binary and see things as wins and losses. And when something doesn't work out, even if it's for the better of both parties, um, in its immediacy, I see it as a loss. I must admit that's changing over the years, and I'm, with the benefit of hindsight, I can see why things didn't go a certain way, but how something else rather wonderful happened. So my
Hmm.
reaction to those sort of events is tempered. But typically, I see almost anything that doesn't go absolutely perfectly as a personal, failure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm softening in that. I am
That's
softening in
good.
that.
That's good.
Yeah.
Because really, if anything that you could take away from that experience was that you definitely learned from it. And
We did. We did. We
yeah,
did. We
yeah,
did.
for sure. So that was the win for you, that you
Yes,
definitely
and in
learned a lot.
retrospect, am I glad it didn't work out? Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it was all good in the end.
Yes.
Yeah. And just a random question, is going green and being more sustainable in your design and company something you think about more often these days?
Much more often. I'm very proud to say it because actually, for years and years, I've wanted to say it, but felt shy and embarrassed because I felt, the thing when you study your craft, like architecture, I'm very proud of the fact that I've studied something. I know it. You can never fully know it, but I'm a sort of expert in it, so to speak. And so I feel
Yes.
I can speak about it with confidence. With sustainability and being conscious of our planet and the urgency of it. I've always felt very nervous because I'm not an expert, and I've been scared to say the wrong thing. I've been scared to say we're doing something but not quite doing enough. And when I've looked to understand it, all I've found is that it's so complex. And there, mine and the studio's thinking has really changed, and it's become to be bold, to say what we do know, to be open about the bits that we are trying to do, and to not let perfect be the enemy of the good. And so it's we're very alive to it. We have a learning program in the studio where our librarian and our procurement team run a learning program where every week we have different events, typically once a week, where a supplier or a collaborator will come in and teach us about their product, their processes, and we set them up quarter on quarter. And this quarter, it is a focus on sustainability. We're trying, when we complete projects, we call our projects sort of our service, we call it orange juice in the fridge, where everything is done in the home, including all your utilitarian items. And so little things like when we're stocking a home with cleaning liquid and washing liquid, we're looking to be sustainable and ecological with those products. And instead of hiding, we're being very vocal about what we are doing. And we know there's a long way to go. And I think the question of, can luxury and sustainability completely coexist? I think the answer is they have to. Do they today? I'm not sure, but I think it's okay to be open about how we're working on it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Because we all are really working on it. It's a massive learning curve.
We are. And so, look, we're a work in progress in every form, but we're proud to say that what we are doing and what we are trying. And we think that's okay. That's okay.
Yes. And how important is having good relationships with your suppliers to you, especially during Brexit?
I mean, it could not be more critical. We are the sort of face of the project, but without the craftsmen, the factories, the makers, the man on site laying out the skirting, the person drilling the holes in the ceiling, we're nothing really. It's a big part of what we do. Big part of what we do.
Yeah. And being able to, trust your supplier, having a really good relationship with them is very important too. And
yes, it's something we talk about a lot because on the one hand, we often think, well, we should just build a small group of suppliers we work with all the time and return to them time and again and that's sort of a more traditional way in which interior decorators would typically work. My plasterer, my wallpaper person. We feel that in doing that, you could miss out on innovation, on giving new people entering that world an opportunity to participate. So we do a mix. There's a core group of artisans and craftsmen and delivery people that we work with regularly, but we are then also always open to working with someone new because they can bring something new. Innovation and risk are inherent to each other. You can't innovate without taking risk. And so one form of our innovation is trying new companies.
That's really good. But then also with that, suppliers are constantly evolving as well and learning and changing and pivoting and all those things. So they're growing and changing too.
Yes.
And improving, hopefully, what they do. So
yes, I mean, there's some suppliers that we've really gone on a journey with together.
That's it, exactly that. And you've both really built each other up and supported each other's businesses in many ways.
Yes.
You are partners after all. Your suppliers can actually be like your partners for sure.
Yes, exactly. Well said.
Yes. And does your own home reflect your own personal style?
So my style changes quite sort of regularly because I'm always growing and learning. My home currently is a bit of a cornucopia of styles, but yes, it is certainly touched by me. It speaks to what has meaning to me. But if I did my home again today, it would probably look quite different to the home I did up 6 years ago.
Okay, so do you think maybe you get bored or you feel like you want to try something new or what?
Yes, I'm learning new things. And I think for me, the growth has really been I'm becoming more bold, more authentic to what I love. Sort of embracing it more and more. And so I think where 6 years ago I tempered what I did a bit more, I think today I'd go for it. I'd go for it more. I
You're
think to my
bolder.
mind, the authenticity of a home is its sort of most striking characteristic. And
Mm.
I think that that's something I would weave into my home more than currently.
Yeah. And do you feel that there's been a shift in the interiors, just generally speaking, like where you're seeing that things are becoming,
Yes,
like
I
you
mean,
described, more authentic? Because I certainly see that, but I'd
yes.
love to know your opinion on that.
Yes, so in COVID, we found sort of a few distinct. I almost describe them as pillars to the process. The first phase was very much around sort of hygiene and safety for our clients. We were sort of very blessed to have a huge amount of insight into how our client base was feeling, because they were reaching out to us at the peak of the global shutdown and the pandemic. So the first phase was, sanitizing products. Where can we do this? Can we use the utility room? Can we put wardrobes where we can sanitize goods? The second phase was very much about functionality and things like, my home office. If I'm using it all the time, I need more lighting, acoustics. I've got 3 kids on Zoom school. How can I create acoustic separation between them? Lots of practical things. How can we all be in this home together? How elastic can our home be? What can you guys help us do on that front? The third phase, as things started to open up, was sort of, how can I create a space where my family, people I love, can come together? What does it mean to have a home which is the center of our lives in terms of our community? And then the fourth phase, which kind of started at the same time as the third phase, but has now carried on. I call it sort of the self-actualization phase of who am I? What do I want out of my home? What does beauty mean to me? And in that self-actualization, there have been some incredible discoveries. And like I said, we've been very lucky and privileged to go on those journeys with the clients. Everything from, I actually don't want a whole floor upstairs for XYZ, dedicated to XYZ use. What I really, really want is a wellness space, because that's what makes me and my partner happy. I love gift wrapping. I want a gift wrapping room. We're doing a
I
gift
love
wrapping room.
that. That's
Yes.
so amazing. I once
Yes.
had a client I worked with, and she had an arts and crafts room just
We've
for
done
her.
actually, yes, we've done an arts and crafts room in Dubai. Very well said, and I'm very much enjoying that. And as part of that, I don't know if it's inherent to that or a side effect or happens to be the clients we're working with. We found a couple of shifts. So there's one group of clients where we're finding the interiors are becoming brighter, very natural, maybe lots of texture, but very calm, very cocooning, speaking to it being a sanctuary, a space of rest. And then
Yes.
the other side is there's a sort of definitely a wave of maximalism and a sort of joie de vivre, just sort of going for it. And we have a studio catch up every 6 weeks. We had one today where the team all present their different projects to each other, and I just remember, speaks to this morning sitting there watching these images, thinking, "Wow, there really are two types of projects we're doing as a studio." So
That's good
yes, I
though.
do see a change.
Me too. Me too. Yeah, a little more earthy, I think, overall in all
Yes,
the.
so we call them the new neutrals. And for us, the new neutrals are this sort of burnt sienna, particular shade of sort of mustard, very warm ivory, terracotta. And yeah, we call them the new neutrals. You're very
Yeah,
right.
I love that. I'm going to have to remember that one, because definitely things are warming up as well. It just looks
Yes,
like things are getting a little bit warmer and less
yes,
glossy. They're just becoming
yes,
more.
less shiny.
Less shiny. Yeah, definitely a little slightly more rustic. I'm not sure if rustic is the right word, but earthier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for me, instead of rustic, maybe for us, it's more natural texture.
Hmm.
But yes,
Yes.
yeah, we're saying the same thing.
Yes, I think we are. I think we are. So, does your knowledge of architecture help you when interior designing?
Yes, I mean it's central to it. I'm an architect that designs interiors, and for me, my step away from architecture to some degree, architecture in its sort of pure sense, came from a sense that you couldn't do something just because it was beautiful. The sort of frivolous was maybe not considered okay. And I felt like I had to post rationalize and give theoretical grounding to things. And whereas on the interior design side, I feel sometimes it's not grounded enough in the spatial and the technical and the functional. And so for me, I really feel like I found my moment of magic where my architectural learning and my interior design experience sort of come together. I think the two are embedded in each other now. I don't really know in my head where one ends and the other begins.
Yeah, it's interesting though. It's unusual, that you're
It
coming from
is.
an
Yes.
architectural background in interior
Yes.
designing.
Yes.
It is. It's
Yes.
really unusual.
It
It's
is. Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
what does good design mean to you?
Good design mean to me? Authentic, crafted, considered, tailored, bold, curated,
Yes.
considered. Considered. I sort of less is more until more is needed.
Yes. So you like things very pared back and considered. Yeah.
Until you're doing maximalism because you're doing maximalism, then you're doing it. Then the more
Yeah.
is good. So
Yeah.
it's but
Exactly.
otherwise, yes, not for the sake of it. No, 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 no.
Yes. And as your business has grown, do you find you are more or less hands on with your clients, or do you just have a very big team working around you now that helps you with a lot of your everyday tasks?
So my ethos from day one, and I think part of what I describe as whatever success Elysian has had, is to hire a team that was better than me at lots of things. I've never been shy to hire people who are better than me. I've not been nervous to do that. And lots of my team is better than me at lots of things. So, yes, I empower my team hugely. It's for me a more of a collaborative workshop as a studio. And that's part of the reason the studio isn't named after me. That was a very early decision. Having said that, I'm also a control freak. So I review every single piece of design work that goes out of the studio.
Wow, I like it. So you really are at the core.
I am. I think, at the moment, it means I have to sort of, some often wake up at sort of 5 to review for 2 hours in the morning.
Hmm.
But it's my fuel. I really, I'm super involved, but there's also very clear chains of command. So once I review something, how that then is implemented, passes down to the other directors, the associates. Lots of people in my core team have been with me for 5, 7 years. Our creative director, Cecilia, and I met back at Candy and Candy. So we've worked together for, 11 years or so. So, I trust them with my life. So there's a huge amount of trust and empowerment as well. Elysian is not the pursuit of an individual. It is about the collective, and the clients are they are the better for it. Very much so.
Yes. And in any one given project, what part of that whole process do you love the most?
Very cheesy, but I love all of it.
You like all of it.
I find the last stretch incredibly fraught. I'm rather unbearable towards the end.
I love
Yesterday,
your
I went to
honesty.
see. I went to
Yeah,
see
it's
a
true.
project, and no, none of the team on site would make eye contact with me. And I said to one of the team, "Why aren't you looking at me?" She said, "I'm trying not to engage." I was like, "Why?" She was, "I'm just scared. I know you're going to pick stuff, and I'm all really nervous about your visit."
Yeah.
I tried really hard yesterday to be really upbeat. I really did. And then when I leave site, I get a flurry of phone calls. How was it? How are you feeling? So the last bits for me are, yeah, they're a bit fraught.
They are. And
um,
what are you like under pressure? How do you deal with pressure?
I think depends on the type of pressure. So I often ask myself the question, in 6 months, will this matter? And
Mm.
if the answer is no, then I am incredibly, I would say, I don't know, ask people around me, but I am very good under pressure. I click into sort of action mode. I go into laying out next steps, assessing risk. If the answer is yes, it will matter, then I'd like to say on the outward persona, I probably, to the wider team, continue to appear like that. To my closer team, my immediate, the directors and associates, I probably get a little bit high strung and snarky. And personally, it starts to affect my sleep. I start to get
Yes.
anxious.
Yes. Well,
But I've learned to really try not to have the team feel it. I work hard not to have the team feel it, but I'm also quite open. This comes back to sort of the mental health piece and the wellness piece. I do not pretend to the team that I'm perfect, that I don't feel anxieties. I talk quite openly about it. I talk about the mechanisms I use to tackle them. I talk about what works for me. I talk about how it sometimes doesn't work, and that despite my best efforts, I didn't sleep last night. I'm very, 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 very human with my team.
Yeah. And unfortunately, stress just has this funny way of impacting your overall, mood. It just does. And
It just
it's
does.
important to know how to manage it. And it's always,
Yeah.
it's
Do you
important
talk
that your
about
work.
it? Don't talk about, different. And like I said,
Yes.
depends on what it is. But I'm learning. I speak to a life coach once a month. I've been working with him since I started the studio. Um,
Great.
I'm very open with him, and I tend to really try and follow through on his, whatever guidance he gives me. I exercise twice a week. I try and meditate every day if I can. Um,
Yes.
so I have my mechanisms, and and I have this amazing team. Um,
Yeah.
Really amazing team that hold me up. I stand on their shoulders.
That's lovely. That's a lovely way of putting it. And it's really important that you all understand each other, because I often find that like that in a really stressful situation, I think everybody, if you're working together for a long time, you understand how the other's going to respond or react to something.
Yes,
So it's important that you're all there to catch
yes.
each other in those moments.
And I often talk about this with the team. People say things like, "Oh, we're a family," and I say this to the team a lot. We're not family, but we're a team. And to me, that is as powerful as being a family.
Mm-hmm.
We're a team. The word "team" is very powerful. It's for me, it's an important word.
Do you find that your clients like to be pushed and challenged into new ways of thinking?
Yes and no. Some clients say it out loud very early on, and that's delightful. We're working on a beautiful, beautiful house in Regent's Park for a client, and
Mm.
she's incredibly self-aware, and she'll say it regularly. Yeah, am I being safe again? Please push me. Please push me. And we have, we really have. And, that day she said, "Oh, I think you might be pushing too much. And then some less so. And there I tend to tell clients that, look, if we present to you and you sign everything off, I think that the meeting has, yes, it's been successful, but in some ways maybe not, because for me there always needs to be that little bit where we push too much and you pushed back. So if we have a meeting and everything is immediately signed off and there's no discourse and debate, I feel we've been too safe. And that's my way of telling them to not be scared of the friction points, that those are part of the process. It doesn't mean we don't understand you. It means we completely understand you, but we are nudging and pushing and testing, and that the end product will be, that amalgamation of the two parties meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And after all, they are engaging in you to challenge their way, their perhaps what way they imagine their home might be or their project
Yes.
might be. And that is your job.
Increasingly, clients will say to us, you are the experts. We have a client right now who's, telling us, look, we don't need to break. We have a very sort of well laid out design process, and we decide sort of to follow it in almost every instance. And this client is saying, let's skip it. You just go for it and just show us the design at the end. And we're pushing back, saying, look, that's lovely. Thank you for believing in us that much. But we do want to kind of have those interim check-ins and we'll take you on the journey with us,
Yeah, exactly. And how do you exactly approach a project or start working on a new project? How does it start for you?
So extensive briefing process. We have a couple of briefing templates that we share with the client. So it starts with the sort of early phone call where we have a set list of questions we tend to ask the client, but then it goes into the briefing. And the briefing process is very extensive. It asks the clients lots about their lives, how they use the rooms. We also ask them to fill a kind of diary of the household for a typical day, but a weekend day, and then a lot of visual brainstorming. So in the early days of the project, we're quite greedy to have as much client time as we can.
Yeah, that's really important to understand the brief, to really understand them as well. I think it's very important to know them as well and understand them as people.
It really is, a coming together of two sets of people, and, for them to feel they can trust us, be open with us. But also, I talked about self-actualization a while back. It's knowing the tools to use to help clients go on a journey of self-discovery of how they live and what does home mean to them, because it's such an opportunity. You're hiring a team to build this amazing home for you. It's really a gift to yourself, and so it's such a chance to pour all the aspirations, everything, every nuance, every quirk into the end product. So as much as clients can invest time and energy in that process, we think the projects really, really show the sort of input that it's had at the start.
Do you carefully select the projects you take on?
Yes, we say no to. At the straight off the bat, we say no to 50% of our inquiries. And then once we've spoken to clients and understood a little bit more, I'd say our overall sort of, we probably say no to 70%.
Wow. So you handpick the projects you'd like to work on?
Yes. We're still very much pitching, and clients, choose us. Often there's sort of a few people they're speaking to. But by the time we've got there, we've very actively decided, yes, this project, this client, it's right for us. It's right for the client. So yes, we're very selective. And we've been like that. Shockingly, I don't quite know how I had the courage, but we've sort of done that near on from day one.
Good. So you have a certain standard, and it's great that you only take
Yes,
on projects
yeah,
that you know
yeah, yeah. And I
you
think
can
that's better for
execute.
the clients too. I think the projects we turned down, the clients gone on to have a better outcome than if they'd worked for us, you know. It's
Yes.
matchmaking, isn't it? So we aren't right for every project, and every project isn't right for us.
Yeah, it's true. It is exactly that matchmaking. It's so true. So tell me about your own home, and where is your favorite place to be in your own home? Where's your one little
Yeah,
spot that's
yeah,
just
I
for
live
you?
in a Georgian townhouse in Chelsea, not far from the studio. It's white stucco fronted, and it has east-west orientation, which I love. That's my favorite orientation because you get the morning sun and the
Yeah.
evening light, and it has sort of quite big floor plates. So not many rooms, but they're quite open and spacious. My favorite room is my son's room because it's sort of a phone free, iPad free zone.
Mm.
And it's got this beautiful, whimsical coal and sun wallpaper of a sort of forest. And it forces me to slow down. Sort of in many ways reminds me of what's important. It's very pared back. It doesn't have much stuff. It's very clean and calm. It's really a place of sort of repose and makes me happy being there. Yeah.
That's lovely. And how would you describe your morning ritual? How does your day begin?
So I'm changing my morning ritual a bit over the last few weeks. Not looking at my phone for the first 20 minutes. Keep my phone sort of a bit further away from my bed, so it's not. I'm not looking at it straight away. And my
Yes.
morning ritual is getting my son dressed and off to school. So his dad or our nanny typically drop him in the morning. And then for me, I make quite a complex smoothie. I put lots of different things, chop them all up very neatly and do a mix. And it's sort of meditative. And I usually do that while listening to the BBC World Service podcast to sort of catch up on the news. And then very often after my shower, I meditate for 15 minutes before heading out for the day.
Oh, I love that. So you really
Yeah.
are looking after yourself. That is great.
I
And
try. My husband would immediately be tapping me on the shoulder and reminding me that I didn't meditate this morning. But yes, I try. I try. That is my.
that's the main thing. So would you describe yourself as a spiritual person?
Oh yes, very much so. In fact, I recently spoke to an astro psychologist
Oh, I
who
love it.
talks to you about your psychological characteristics, traits, and development, but is rooted in analyzing your astrological chart. Um,
I
it's
love it.
that's such a cultural. It's embedded in me from coming from India and the Hindu culture.
Hmm.
Um, I no offense to anyone, but I get quite irate with religion because so often when I'm listening to even the morning podcast from the BBC, so much of what's the conflict is rooted in religion being abused, religion in its purest form. I have no problem with, and so over the years, I find myself leaning more and more spiritually.
Yeah. I know. I would also describe myself as a spiritual person for sure.
Mhm,
And do
mhm.
you have a magic hour in the day that you're just at your best? Is there like a 1 hour throughout the day that you just know that's your time?
I would say it's mid morning. I really find my stride mid morning. I'm not great. It depends on the task. Creatively. I'm really I feel very attuned in a kind of half asleep state. So not this morning, but day before yesterday, I woke up. You won't believe it. I woke up at 2:40, and I worked from 2:40 to about 5 o'clock, and then
Oh
slept for
my.
2 hours again. But I'm kind of half awake. I have very poor eyesight.
Mm.
Um, but this just sounds really incredible, and I hope it won't make my clients panic. But I'll often look at stuff on my iPad without my glasses on because it's sort of this blurred looking at it in this blurry state, it allows me to really sort of go off on a bit of a creative journey in my
Yeah.
head, and then I'll put my glasses on and I'll draw, mark things up. So creatively, there's this sort of dreamlike state in the middle of the night, which I quite like. But when it comes to sort of anything to do with the team and clients and outward looking, then I think mid-morning is when I hit my stride.
Gosh. And what's your star sign as a matter of interest?
I'm Libran.
You're Libran, so you are into your detail and you like all things beautiful.
Yes, absolutely. Spot on.
And would you describe yourself as a high achiever?
Gosh, I don't. That's such a loaded. I don't know.
I think
I'm
you
ambitious for sure. I'm absolutely an ambitious person. Am I high? I don't know. It's hard to say because I always want more, but I'm ambitious, so perhaps ambition and high achieving have something to say to each other, but I wouldn't know how to answer that. That's what
But
sort
you
of
have.
I've done it, but I don't know if I have.
You have. I think you're being probably critical on yourself. I think, my goodness, I would say that you have achieved a lot.
Thank you. That's very kind.
But maybe it's just that you feel like you want to do more and you haven't really hit your target yet.
Always want to do more. Yes.
Yeah. So
But don't we all? I mean, most of us, it gets us out of bed in the morning, right? It's that pursuit of the next and the next.
For sure. So what is it that motivates you to do all that you do?
The pursuit of beauty.
I love it. The pursuit of beauty. Yeah. So that's your motivator. Okay. And how do you unwind in the evenings? Or at the weekends?
A range of stuff. Yeah, a range of stuff. I mean, what really sets me up. So on the weekends, I really, really try not to work or look at social media too much. I think for me, the weekends are pretty sacrosanct. And because I'm sort of living 120% during the week, by Friday evening, I really believe you have to invest in rest. It's not a waste of time. And that's, again, something I've learned. I'm a sort of workaholic by inherently, and it was something I was proud of. But over time, I've learned that I have to shape that so I can be my best for 5 days a week, and that means to rest. So, on the weekends, I love a long walk. I love going to museums. I love going to the farmers market. My husband and I are real foodies, absolutely love going to the farmers market and buying beautiful produce and hosting friends and family. That's, I think, our absolute favorite thing to do. In the evenings, a mix. We don't tend to watch TV always. We go through phases. So we'll have weeks where we'll watch something and then we'll take a whole month off. And in that time, we will often listen to a book or a podcast together. And we find that really enjoyable because if you listen to a book together, you're then it's an activity you're doing together and you talk about the book. It's a very lovely thing to do as a couple. Personally, I love two things. I love coloring, either on my iPad or on a coloring pad. So just yesterday I was coloring while watching TV with my husband, and I absolutely love jigsaw puzzles. They're a sort of favorite activity. So I always have a jigsaw puzzle on the go.
That sounds great. So how will you be spending the holidays this year?
Staying in London. We also we love tidying. So usually, very bizarrely, over Christmas, we have a whole sort of part of the Christmas break, which is lots of entertaining. We love having people in our home. Our home is always full of friends and family, and we love that. So lots of entertaining, and then we have a few days, typically the time between Christmas and New Year's, where we just have a massive spring clean, which is a very strange thing to do, but we find it utterly delightful. We love it.
Gosh, yeah, and there's a lot about your energy field and all that. It's we
love starting the new year with a bit of a zhuzh.
That's a great tradition.
Yeah.
So, Charu, if you were allowed to invite 3 guests from anywhere in the world, anyone, to your dinner
Dead or
table,
alive or
Alive or dead? Who would
Okay.
they be and why?
Three guests from anywhere in the world. Hmm. Who would I have? Only three. I would have Alexander the Great.
Oh, wow.
I would
Why?
have, because of his adventure and his having seen the world, at a time when
Yeah.
adventure was truly adventure.
Mm-hmm.
So him, I would have Birbal, who was part of the Mughal courts. He was the right-hand man to Akbar, a great Mughal emperor. And Birbal was sort of the court jester, but he was also a very, very intellectual man. He is the man who invented a sort of form of religion that brought Hinduism and Islam together. He encouraged Akbar to invest a lot in art and culture at the time. So Birbal from the court of Akbar from the Mughal period.
Okay.
And then the last person I would have is Zaha Hadid.
Oh, she's incredible.
Yes, so that's my mix. Ask me on another
Zaha.
day, might be a different mix, but today's
Yeah.
mix.
Yeah, she is. She is something else. She really is.
Yes.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
To my younger self. To open discussions ambitiously but credibly, not be scared to go in ambitiously. I think I've sort of, shied away from that. To be bold, to be elastic, but most of all, to be authentic. It took me a long time. I was a late bloomer on the authenticity front. I spent a lot of time wanting to be other than myself. And so I wish I'd embraced that sooner.
Yeah. And where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years. I mean, I can't see myself being anything other than an architect and an interior designer. So, you know, wherever I'd be doing pretty much exactly what I'm doing now. I think it's my sort of gravitational pull. It's my due north, you know. You can sort
Yes.
of give me a little nudge, but I'll find my way back. Just doing what I do. I mean, I really, my sort of contentment factor is pretty high. So I'd be pretty happy if I was doing what I do now. That would do me.
And I'm going to just do one more thing with you, which we call our quick fire round of questions. Are you
Okay.
ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. Tea or coffee?
T, T, T.
That's an answer. Bath or
Yes.
shower?
Shower.
Text or talk?
Talk any day.
Morning or night?
Morning.
Sin or virtue?
I'll go with sin. Sin.
City or country living?
I'm going to be really boring and say city.
Okay. Home or abroad?
Both, both. The best bit about going abroad is coming back home.
Good. That's a good answer. Summer or winter?
Summer for sure.
Architecture or interior design?
Oh, that's just mean. Uh, Architecture, my first true love.
That's fair. That's good. You're being loyal to architecture.
I'm being
Site
loyal.
visits or office meetings?
Oh, site visits any day.
Yes. Modern or classic design?
If I had to, modern.
Yeah. And this is my final question. Alex the Great or Zaha Hadid?
If I had to, Zaha.
Yeah, I think so. She's pretty amazing.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you very, very much for joining me today. You've been so interesting and fascinating, actually. And it's been lovely chatting to you. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.